What's up? It's Sela the Poet, and tonight I'm going to be talking about domestic violence. I'm a survivor of domestic violence, and I made the decision to leave an abusive situation almost 7 years ago in 2011. So domestic violence is defined as a pattern of coercive, controlling behavior that can include physical, emotional, financial, spiritual violence. So I grew up in an abusive household. At one time, my father was a drug user and an alcoholic. And sometimes he would come home drunk, and him and my mother would get into arguments, verbal arguments, and then it would become physical. I grew up seeing my mother, assaulted, punched in the face, slapped around, thrown into walls, that type of thing. And, if I would cry or get in the way, sometimes I also caught the backdraft of that. Violence is not an acceptable way of life, but unfortunately, when you're raised in that type of environment, it becomes normalized to you. So you don't think, to take a stand against it if it's normalized. The good thing about me is that there was a part of me inside that was always putting up a resistance. When I was being cursed at, when I was being called names, when I was being called a bitch, and just being demeaned by certain relatives and certain family members, I knew that, the things that they were saying to me, it just wasn't true. I knew that that's not who I was. But, when you're in around abusive people will blame you for everything. Abusive people will not have anything good to say about you. Abusive people will try to ruin your reputation. Abusive people will try to tear you down with their words and use their words as weapons. Abusive people will try to get you into trouble. If you confront them about their abusive behavior, sometimes you become enemy number one. And in my household, I became the enemy once I started putting up a resistance against the abusive behavior that had been going on for years in my family. I decided that enough was enough. I decided that I did not want to be treated in that manner anymore. I didn't want people putting their hands on me. I didn't want people cursing at me. I didn't want people lying on me, putting false accusations against me. I just got tired of people trying to control me, and I resisted. And the way that I resisted was I left home. In February 2011, I was assaulted by my mother. We got into an argument, and she ended up assaulting me. I called the police, and when the police got to the household, she lied and said that I tried to attack her with a bat, which wasn't true. I was actually defending myself against her. She came after me first, and I was scared for my life. I was scared for, my safety. So I tried to defend myself, and then she tried to turn it around and say that I attacked her, which wasn't true. So knowing that she was able to lie to the police that way, I just knew that, I don't know, she could always call the police and lie about something else. So I packed up some clothes, packed up some of the children's clothing, and I left. A friend came and picked me up, and I left, and that started me and my kids' process of living in hiding. I moved in with a friend. I didn't tell anybody where I was living, and I started reaching out to domestic violence agencies. I called the National Domestic Violence Hotline, and they put me in contact with local agencies that were able to help me. Safe Horizons and others. There were so many different agencies that were out there, and I got counseling. I ended up eventually having to go into a domestic violence shelter, and all through that process, there were orders of protection, there were police reports, there were all types of different things going on. And while this was going on, my abusers were also falsely accusing me of things that I didn't do, accusing me of being crazy, accusing me of saying that I was mentally ill, which I wasn't. You know, abusers will always try to turn their behavior around on you. They will not take responsibility for their actions. They will blame you for their behavior or try to find a justification for why they were being abusive. Or they may not even admit it at all. Most abusers use denial. And in my family, the response for confronting people about abusive behavior was always denial. You know, someone could basically slap you in the face and then you confront them about it and they would deny it, saying that they didn't do it, saying that you're crazy. And you're not crazy, you know. You know, abuse is real, violence is real, and you know, these things did happen. Yes, I did go through some physical violence on my father's side and on my ex-husband's side. You know, there were basically, you know, some choices that I made that weren't too great. I chose a man who I thought loved me, but he ended up being an abusive man. And, you know, it ended up being a marriage that was very, very toxic. And, you know, I ended up having to get a divorce, you know, because of abusive behavior. You know, someone threatening my life, you know, saying that they wish that my babies were dead, and, you know, making threats to kill me, and, you know, hitting me and doing different things. And, yeah, domestic violence is real. If people are not treating you in a manner with love, respect, and dignity, then you are more than likely in a toxic, dysfunctional, or abusive relationship. And there is a way out. There is a way to get help. The number to the domestic violence hotline is 1-800-799-7233. If you find yourself in an abusive situation, there is hope, there is help. And I hope that, you know, some of my words was able to encourage someone tonight. I will post again on this subject. Good night, guys.